Good day, YouTube. JD here for the Pagan Perspective on Wednesday. This week's topic covers racism in the Odinist religion. And this question has been covered very thoroughly by the first two hosts, so I won't dive too deep into the articles and things. I'll talk about some information that I feel like we would all benefit a little bit better for actually looking into. For example, when you talk about the Odinist religion, when you look at its values, when you look at some of its core values, you find that it's very interested in maintaining a connection with a people they call folk. Now, if you do enough research, you'll run into the way they describe folk. And from what I can tell, the folk that they describe are pretty much other Europeans. Is that a bad thing? That's kind of what I'm here to ask you to think about, because I'm not here to tell you what you should think. This is the pagan perspective. So you're gonna get many different perspectives from different pagans of different backgrounds. I myself, an eclectic, solitary Wiccan witch, with a strong emphasis on shamanic practices, don't really have a direct connection with people from Europe, other than some of my blood that has a little bit of British and Irish there. Other than that, it's all African here, so I don't really have a strong connection with Odinism. I don't really actually know anyone to talk to directly to get their idea on it. But after doing research and reading the articles that are below, that are tied up with this question, I did come to the conclusion that from my standpoint, from my perspective, from my belief after reading and doing research, I don't believe that Odinism is racist in its natural setting. What I do believe is, I believe that Odinism does favor a prejudice outlook. Now, that may sound a bit discouraging to people, or it may make you or it may make you angry, but I want to explain the difference between a prejudice and actually being racist. A prejudice, in my opinion, is something that we all are guilty of. Okay? Everybody. I feel like every single person on this planet holds certain prejudices against other people. I believe it's human nature to look at someone, to judge them immediately. However, when you judge them, I feel like the best thing to do is to take your judgments and allow them to be malleable, allow them to be fluid, allow them to change based on the character of the person that you're judging. In the animal kingdom, if you are a species that's normally preyed on, when you look at the predator with his teeth bared and his claws bared, your first instinct is based on prejudices. It's what keeps you alive. That's nature. We aren't animals per se, so we have the ability to change our prejudices. We can adjust our prejudices. We can go, hey, that person may be the equivalent to what I was told was a creature with teeth and claws bared. An example would be, what the 5 o'clock news is always talking about, what some criminal did, that kind of thing. When you see someone that you don't feel safe around, when you see someone that you want to grab your purse around, when you see someone that makes you want to lock the door like I just did, that kind of stuff, that's based off of prejudices. You do it because you feel like you need to be safe. However, once you get to know someone who looks like that person that made you lock that door, or made you hold that purse, or made you cross the street, you realize not everybody is deserving of these prejudices. Here's where racism comes in. To me, racism is when you take that prejudice and you add power and authority and the ability to change laws behind it. What is the biggest driving force behind crime? Lack of education. In the areas where I grew up, the schools were pretty bad. We didn't have the best books. Our field trips weren't the best. The state didn't funnel that much money into it. It's a public school. You see where I'm going? It can create the situation where you'll have more crime in that area. So people who look like me, people who sound like me in my area, you may feel like are criminals, or can become more prone to being a criminal because of their lack of education. Well, after a certain amount of time, you can grow up, you can leave that area, you can read books, you can educate yourself, you can move away from that prejudice. So the way I sound may disarm you, but my skin color will make you hold your purse. Your skin color will make you lock that door. My skin color will make you go across that street. When you hear me speak, you might hear that I don't use too much slang. I enunciate words a little bit better than some of the people that I grew up with. That might make you go, okay, well, wait a minute, my prejudices are wrong. I might be able to trust this guy. Well, when you look at Odinism, when you look at their term of folk, that is a way to make sure that their particular tribes, or, you know, in a Wiccan setting, they aren't Wiccans, but in a Wiccan setting, we would call it covens, to make sure that their covens don't get any of these people that have the bad traits into them. That's where that comes from. So when you ask, is Odinism racist? I would say no. I believe that Odinism is a system that encourages certain prejudices, like human nature does with everyone and everything on this planet, but in an entrance to protect one's tribe. That's the way I would look at it. I don't think they're going around and instantly finding people that don't look like them and wanting to hurt them. Now, because the system does kind of favor prejudice, you do have people who are, in my mind, sick. I feel like racism is the result of somebody that's also sick. There's this term called white flight, another hot button term, another thing that lots of people get upset about when you hear it, white flight. But if you don't know what white flight is, the idea is that when more minorities started to be able to afford better homes and better schools, they came into areas where European Americans were traditionally living in nice homes and nice schools and things. So these European Americans decided to actually move inland, move away from the cities, the major cities on the coastlines, and go inland. When you do that, you sever yourself from a whole bunch of different peoples. You don't understand their customs. You don't understand where they come from. And it may be an unfortunate circumstance where you just see nothing but the news, and the news is about ratings. The news knows that fear gets lots and lots of ratings. It gets lots and lots of people watching. So the person who has engaged in white flight, who has grown up in that situation, who has only ever spoken with or gone to school with or eat lunch with other European Americans, that can cause a situation where you're very uptight, you're very afraid, you could be very prejudiced against these people. And when that happens, when you're looking for a religion, Odinism does kind of have that as a handhold where people can kind of grab that and go, hey, it's only European Americans that we're going to allow into our tribes. Where the bad part comes in is that you're going to find people who would like to oppress these people, who would like to harm these people, who would like to say, hey, we're better than these people. That's where the racism has radicalized some people who are Odinists. The articles have mentioned that there's some people who went to jail and became racist when they went to jail. In my mind, if you are a victim of white flight, because I feel like it's a victim thing. When you do that, when you grow up in that system, you don't know who these people are. You don't understand their customs. You're afraid of their skin. You're afraid of what they might do at night. When you grow up in that system and you're going to prison, one of the things they want you to do, when I say they, other people of your skin color, other European Americans may say, hey, when you go to prison, you need to go into prison and you need to join one of these gangs. One of these gangs, their religion could be Odinism. Their religion could be other religions that favor white skin, white heritage, white blood. In doing some of the research, I actually looked up some of the people that were mentioned in these articles, especially one where the person was eventually arrested for smuggling marijuana. I thought that was frivolous, but I looked it up anyway, and come to find out after doing the research, this person was actually involved in creating a certain type of Odinism, where they preach anti-Semitic teachings and they teach racism based prejudices in their actual church that was basically training people in Odinism but exposing them to this racist version of it. So I believe there's actually an active series of bad apples that have come into contact with Odinism, and they've radicalized it and turned their particular branch of Odinism into a branch that does move toward racism. But they only did that because they saw that it originally did have this prejudice outlook on things. But it wasn't malicious. It was put there in order to keep their particular tribes and things from pulling in these preconceived ideas of what these other races would be. So the idea that someone would not allow you to come into their tribe, to me, isn't racist, because they don't really have much authority. It's not like you can't take your kids to school because you're not an Odinist. It's not like you can't send your kid to a certain preschool because they're not an Odinist. It's a pagan religion. Pagan religions don't really have that much power when it comes down to it. So it's not going to really become something that is along the lines of racism. Now, when you type into Google racist Odinism symbols, you will run into some symbols that start to look a little bit like a swastika. Let's not forget where the swastika came from. It was borrowed or stolen by the folks who were known as Nazis. So we know that there are certain European peoples that have borrowed from other signs and things. If you look hard enough, though, you'll find other Odinists who are upset, very upset, that people are calling their religion racist. So to me, it's a problem that other Odinists are aware of. There are many conversations on Reddit and other online forums where people are trying to combat this. They're trying to get this stereotype cleaned up, because people don't want to be labeled as a racist. This term is a very hot button term. It causes feelings of guilt. It causes feelings of anger on many different situations. So I just wanted to be clear. I wanted to make sure that we talked about the difference between a prejudice, the difference between racism, and how we all can actually be prejudiced when it comes down to who we want to be with, who we want to speak with, who we want to work with, who we want to eat with. And what I'll do is I'll put down below, I'll reference down below these people who started these radical racist versions of Odinism, because it was in 1969 that one of the churches was actually built, and they kind of spewed this kind of thing to the community, and the people, it's a church, so people joined up. People were being taught this, so it is an active problem. And I would say that most Odinists are not racist. They are proud people. They want to be known as such. But it's important to understand that some people in this country, especially in today's political climate that's been very volatile, it deserves a whole nother video in and of itself, talking about how the political climate is going really crazy and it's caused all kind of stuff. I've even seen some symbols that are used in Norse magic and in Odinism and Wodenism in the actual crowds. Now that we're talking about it, the Charlottesville, Virginia thing, if you haven't seen that, I'll see if I can get a picture. Maybe I'll put it up here while I'm speaking, like in B-roll, so you can see it. There were actually people holding signs with sigils or symbols of Odinism in the crowd where the racist people were. So that there is an active problem going on in that religion, and they are working very hard to try to set themselves apart, so that way people understand that they all aren't racist. They may hold certain prejudices against other people, but they aren't all racist. That is the most important thing to basically take away from this. That just about does it for me. If you're someone who practices Samhain, it's close, so I wish you a happy Samhain. If I don't see you by the time my next video comes about, if you are one of the folks that just likes to have a happy Halloween, I wish that to you as well. Thank you so much for watching this video, and blessed be.